Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this week's Spotlight. With the intense media coverage and commentary that has focused upon the Muslim community in recent weeks, it's no surprise there appears to be a significant rise in anti-Muslim sentiment. In mass protests held across the country this week, many vented their anger against the current political beat-up of the Muslim community. Secretary of Unions New South Wales, Mark Lennon, in particular criticised the Prime Minister's recent attack on Muslim leaders, calling his comments very inappropriate. Last Friday in Melbourne, Editor-in-Chief of Fairfax newspaper The Age, Andrew Holden, issued a public apology for wrongly branding a Muslim man a terrorist late last year. In his apology, delivered at suburban Deverton Mosque, Mr Holden said that the paper acknowledged their terrible mistake and presented the mosque with a donation as part of a legal settlement. Serious questions need to be asked in light of this incident pertaining to the media's responsibilities when investigating and reporting current affairs. With me in the studio is Moustafa Kheir, Principal Solicitor of Birchgrove Legal in Sydney. Welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me on.
Mustafa, we saw The Age Editor-in-Chief, Andrew Holden, make an apology to Abu Bakr Allam. We've seen a front page apology. We've seen a attendance to a local mosque. We've seen a donation. Do you consider this a positive outcome?
Let's look at the facts here. The young man's 19 years of age. His picture was downloaded from Facebook without his consent, or anyone's consent for that matter. His face was connected to a major terrorism act in a climate where there was a political instability and a media witch hunt. This man and his family were forced to defend themselves both within the Muslim community and publicly. His future prospective employment was jeopardized, and he refers to himself to significant depression as a result of those actions. In terms of the outcomes, there's been a front page apology. Now, in my experience, that's very, very rare. It's been quite difficult, in my experience, to get a public apology on the front page of a major newspaper. There's been an apology in the local mosque, and that goes towards remedying any disrepute towards him within the community. There's also been a donation to that mosque. There's also been a letter released to the prospective employer rectifying the record, and an undisclosed monetary amount paid towards this young man as a result of the actions of the newspaper. So in totality, I think it is a fair and just result.
Now there is quite a lot of reckless journalism at the moment. What other cases of defamation are you aware of that concern the Muslim community?
Within the Muslim community, there have been matters where institutions such as mosques, schools, scholars have been put into disrepute by major newspapers and major publishers. In my experience, there's been results where undisclosed financial amounts have been paid. There have been rectifications of the records and apologies made in almost every instance.
Now, as a lawyer, what advice do you have for those that feel that they've been sort of unfairly portrayed in the media?
To those that feel that they're being unfairly treated in the media, they should know that defamation is an area of law that is open to them. There are remedies open to them throughout the judicial system, and they should seek legal advice as quickly and as soon as possible. Now, I need to stress here that if one is aware that there is about to be some publication of some defamatory remarks in a major newspaper or on any TV network, there is a right of action to ask for an injunction and stop that publication from going to air. This is significant and needs some quick action so that the misinformation isn't spread.
And this is done through lawyers, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, we've all heard of the new laws that are being legislated under the banner of national security. Should an Australian be approached by an agency such as ASIO or the Australian Federal Police, what legal rights do they have?
But as what we all need to understand is that enshrined within the Australian judicial system is the right to silence. This is the right of every citizen to remain silent. That silence can't be used against them in any future proceedings. There are a few exceptions to those, of course, which we don't need to go into. In terms of ASIO or other investigatory bodies approaching citizens, that citizen has a right to A, not speak to that organisation, exercise their right to silence, that is, and B, not remain within the area, so they're very entitled to leave.
Okay. What about the AFP?
In terms of the AFP, they do have a right to stop people from moving away in terms of the arrest. So if one hears that they've been arrested, they're not entitled to resist. However, the right to silence still exists, and they don't need to speak to police or answer any questions whatsoever. That extends to any question whatsoever.
Now, we have seen quite a lot of police raids previously, within the Muslim community. What about police raids? What legal rights are available for someone that gets raided by police?
In terms of police raids, police usually need to have a search warrant with them. That warrant needs to be shown to the occupier of the premises prior to any searches are conducted. So you need the police to show that documentation to you. Once you've had a chance to read through that documentation, which explains your rights, police can undertake the search. The searches are usually recorded by camera, and you're entitled to accompany police throughout that search.
With the current laws in place, is there anything specific that Muslims should be aware of in regards to, for example, surveillance laws?
In relation to surveillance laws, Malaz, there's an expansion of the optical surveillance laws, which means cameras being put in people's houses. The police now have the right to, as well as ASIO, have the right to install cameras in people's houses. These are installed covertly, without people knowing they exist, of course. A warrant needs to be applied for and granted by the judiciary. There is also a right for ASIO and other law enforcement agencies to install cameras outside of a premises, pointing into a house without a warrant as well. In terms of listening devices, these have always been in place, these laws. These laws allow for listening devices to be installed inside houses, and people can be listened to, of course, on the application of a warrant being granted through the judicial system.
What about phones and mobile phones, for example?
Look, this has always been used in the investigatory system, be it terrorist-related matters or otherwise, drug-related matters, for example. There are numerous cases where phones have been tapped into, listened to, and later material produced in prosecution of certain people.
And is there a warrant required for this particular?
Warrants are always required in terms of when listening devices are being taken. Police also have the power, for example, to ask for call charge records. These are records from telecommunication organisations which allow them to get records of any calls that, for example, you have made to me or I have made to you in the past.
Now you've mentioned optical devices. Does that mean that Muslim women are potentially being sort of watched and monitored inside their home?
Now look, ASIO does have guidelines that regulate where devices can be applied. But as a Muslim, we should know that our women, for example, need to be protected. Caution, I don't want to alarm people, but caution needs to be taken. There might be cameras in people's houses, people are unaware, and muhajjabat and munaqibat are exposed as a result of these cameras.
Thank you, Moustafa. Is there any final advice that you may have for our viewers?
Look, there is the legal remedy, the judicial system in place as well. So I do recommend anyone that has any questions to get in contact with a legal representative and try to get rid of any concerns. It's usually the case that with knowledge, one feels more comfortable with their surroundings. So if you have a problem with the law, it's best to ask a lawyer, specialist in the field, and have those problems addressed.
Moustafa Kheir, Principal Lawyer at Birchgrove Legal, thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like our Facebook page, OnePath Network. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.